Pour a glass of milk right now. Drink it. Nothing happens. No cramping, no bloating. Your body just handles it quietly, like it's nothing. But for most of human history, that glass of milk would have made you violently ill. You are not supposed to be able to do this. And yet here you are, doing it anyway. Something changed. Something deep inside your DNA rewired itself so you could drink the milk of another species. It's one of the strangest things that ever happened to our genome. And it happened faster than almost anything else in human evolution. Here's the part nobody tells you. Every human baby is born able to digest milk. That's the whole point of milk. It's built for infants. Your small intestine produces an enzyme called lactase, and lactase breaks down lactose, the sugar in milk, into something your body can actually absorb. But in nearly every mammal on Earth, including humans for most of our history, that enzyme switches off after weaning. Once you stop nursing, your body assumes you're done with milk forever. It shuts the factory down. So imagine you're a person living 10,000 years ago. You're an adult. Your lactase enzyme is already switched off, just like it was supposed to. Then someone hands you a bowl of milk from a goat or a cow. What happens next is not pleasant. The undigested lactose sits in your gut and starts fermenting. Bacteria feast on it. You get bloating, cramping, gas, diarrhea. Your body is screaming that this substance does not belong here anymore. So why does a large percentage of the adult human population today drink milk with zero problems? The answer starts around 7,500 years ago in Central Europe, in a region researchers now associate with early Neolithic farming communities. Geneticist Mark Thomas at University College London has spent years trying to trace exactly when and where the ability to digest milk into adulthood first appeared in the human population. His research, using ancient DNA extracted from skeletons across Europe, found something remarkable. Early farmers from that period did not have the genetic mutation for adult lactose digestion. None of them. Not one. That means the humans who first started herding cattle and drinking milk were, biologically, lactose intolerant. They were farming animals for milk their bodies couldn't properly process. Why would anyone do that? Here's where it gets interesting. They probably weren't drinking it straight. Archaeological residue on pottery fragments from that era, studied by researcher Richard Evershed at the University of Bristol, shows early farmers were processing milk into cheese and yogurt. Fermentation breaks down much of the lactose before it ever reaches your gut. So early humans found a workaround. They turned an indigestible substance into something their bodies could tolerate, long before they understood why it worked. But something kept pushing the population toward a genetic solution instead of just a cultural one. And that something was survival. Picture a famine, crops fail, meat is scarce. But you have cattle, and cattle can be milked again and again without being killed. A single cow can produce far more usable calories over its lifetime through milk than through its meat alone. In a world where the difference between surviving winter and starving was razor thin, anyone whose body could tolerate raw milk directly had an enormous advantage. They had access to a calorie source, a hydration source, and a nutrient source that other members of their community couldn't safely use. This is where a genetic mutation becomes something far more powerful than random chance. A single change near a gene called LCT, the gene responsible for lactase production, meant that in some people, the enzyme never switched off. It just kept running for life. And once that mutation appeared in a population that depended heavily on dairy farming, it spread fast. Geneticist Yuval Itan, working alongside Mark Thomas, modeled how quickly this trait would need to spread to match the genetic patterns we see in modern Europeans. Their conclusion was staggering. This is one of the strongest cases of natural selection ever detected in the human genome, and one of the fastest. In evolutionary terms, a few thousand years is nothing. Yet in that short window, the ability to digest milk into adulthood went from essentially absent to widespread across huge portions of certain populations. Think about what that means. Somewhere in Central Europe, a person was born with a random mutation. Nobody chose it. Nobody planned it. It was just noise in the genetic code, like millions of other mutations that appear and disappear without consequence. Except this one, purely by circumstance, happened to matter. It happened to show up in a population that had just started keeping dairy animals. And because it mattered, that person likely had more surviving children. Those children had more surviving children. Generation by generation, the mutation spread outward like ripples from a stone dropped in water. But here's the twist. Almost nobody expects. This trait did not spread evenly across the world. It's not a universal human upgrade. It's a regional adaptation, and it maps almost perfectly onto which cultures relied on dairy farming and which didn't. In populations with deep histories of cattle or goat herding, like much of Northern Europe, parts of East Africa, and certain pastoralist groups in the Middle East, adult lactose tolerance is common, sometimes present in the vast majority of people. But in populations without that same dairy farming history, like large parts of East Asia and indigenous communities across the Americas, adult lactose intolerance remains the norm, not the exception. Globally, researchers estimate that a majority of adult humans on Earth are still lactose intolerant. The lactose-tolerant population, the one that can drink a glass of milk with no consequences, is actually the evolutionary outlier. That reframes everything, doesn't it? The people who can drink milk without a second thought aren't the default setting for humanity. They're the exception. A genetic accident that happened to align with a specific cultural practice in a specific place at a specific moment in history, and then rode a wave of natural selection so strong it left a visible signature in the DNA of billions of people alive today. And this wasn't the only place it happened. Researchers studying pastoralist populations in East Africa found a completely different genetic mutation, one that arose independently, that produces the same result. Adult lactose tolerance. Different mutation, same outcome. Nature stumbled onto the same solution twice, in two unrelated populations, separated by thousands of miles, because both groups faced the same evolutionary pressure. Both depended on milk to survive. This is called convergent evolution, when separate populations independently evolve the same trait because they're solving the same problem. It's one of the clearest signs that a trait isn't random luck dressed up as destiny. It's a direct response to environmental pressure, repeating itself wherever the conditions are right. So the next time you pour a glass of milk, you're not just drinking a beverage. You're drinking the end result of a genetic gamble that paid off thousands of years ago in the bodies of people who were desperate enough to keep animals alive instead of eating them, patient enough to ferment what they couldn't digest, and lucky enough to carry a mutation that turned a liability into an advantage. Your ancestors didn't set out to change human biology. They were just trying to survive a hard winter. But biology doesn't care about intentions. It only cares about what works. And somewhere along the way, drinking milk stopped being something your body tolerated by accident and became something written directly into your genes. So pour that glass of milk again. Drink it. Nothing happens. But now you know exactly why.